This afternoon, I want to share some thoughts from Luke chapter 10, and some things that have been on my mind for the last few weeks. And it's not a matter just because of what's going on in our world today, even though that is a little bit of what precipitates this. It's more just a matter of who we need to be as the church, who we need to be as individuals. Luke chapter 10, we see the story of the Good Samaritan. And anytime I hear the story of the Good Samaritan, I automatically think of, ironically, or maybe not ironically, I think of Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was on TV for 30 some years. He was one of those who shaped my childhood. Coming home from school, turn on the TV, he was on. Yes, it was a children's show. Yes, it was about make-believe, but it was at its core acting as a neighbor. Because Mr. Rogers, every day as he would start his show, he'd sing a catchy little tune about "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And that's the way we as Christians are called to be neighbors, to be neighborly to those around us, those that we meet. And that's the question that Jesus answers in Luke chapter 10. It says this: on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" The man answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But the man wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus just exactly, "Who is my neighbor?" In Jesus' reply, he said this. He told him a parable, a story. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he fell into the hands of robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him, and then they went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, took him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins, and he gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return I will reimburse you for any extra expense that you may have." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." And I like what the Message, Eugene Peterson's version, says, is who do you think was the best neighbor? The one who treated him kindly. Not just the one who had mercy, but the one who treated him kindly, the one who treated him the way that he would have wanted to be treated. See, what's interesting to me is, as we look at this story that Jesus tells, the man came to him to trick him. He wanted to be the wise guy, saying, "Hey, Jesus, I got a question for you. How do I inherit eternal life?" Jesus didn't fall to the bait. He just simply said, "Hey, what do you think? What's the Bible say?" "Well, love God, love others." "Okay, you're right." The guy pressed him. "Well, who's my neighbor then? Who's the others that I am supposed to love?" And Jesus tells a story. The irony of it is Jesus doesn't answer the man's question. Or maybe he does answer his question, he just doesn't answer it the way the man expected him to answer. See, the man may have been wanting specifics. Is this guy over here, is Joe my neighbor, whereas Joaquin isn't? Is Bob my neighbor, or Susie isn't? See, the man was looking for specifics as to, okay, I don't have to love this guy over here because this guy over here doesn't look like me. I don't have to love this guy over here, this woman over here, because she's a woman. I don't have to love this person down the street because they're not as good as I am. They're not as holy as I am. They're not as righteous as I am. That's what he was wanting. He was wanting an excuse. He was wanting a reason to get out of loving somebody. He was wanting Jesus to say, hey, this is who you love and this is who you don't love. Or more importantly, he was wanting Jesus to admit that, these are the people that I show love to. To show that, at least in his mind, in the lives of some of the other Pharisees and Sadducees, Jesus was choosing the wrong crowd to associate with. He was associating with the unassociatable, if you would. He was making a wrong choice. But Jesus takes the question, he flips it on its end, and points it right back at him. He makes it not about who we are to love, but the attitude that we are to have. And I think so many times today, we find ourselves in the exact same situation. We come to Jesus and we say, Jesus, I know you want us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Who's my neighbor? And Jesus says, everyone is your neighbor. He says, I'm not concerned with specifics. I'm not concerned with exclusions. I'm not concerned with making a list and saying, okay, this is not a wedding list where we have 150 guests and we've got to make sure that the 300 people we want to invite, we can cut down to 150. That's not what we're doing here. We're not making that kind of a list. We're not saying I like this person but not that person. I love this person but I don't love that person. What I'm saying is, what attitude do you have? Do you have an attitude of love toward everyone that you meet? Do you have a way of sharing your love with everyone you meet? It's not about them, it's about me. It's not about who they are, it's about who I am. And that's a hard lesson to learn. Because, see, we find ourselves looking around us, and the easiest thing for us to do is look at the differences in others. Maybe the difference is as simple as black and white. It's a skin color difference. Maybe it's an ethnic difference. Maybe it's a gender difference. Maybe it's a profession difference. Maybe it's an income difference. See, the differences are huge between people. And sometimes what we do is we line people up and we say, you know what, I'm going to love those who are like me. Love those who are in the same income bracket as I am. Love those who are in the same gender that I am. Love those who look like I do. Love those who talk like I do. Love those who vote like I do. And those who are different, somebody else can love them. We find ourselves like the other two individuals in the story. We find ourselves saying, you know what, it's sad that the guy got beat up. It's sad that he's laying there in the ditch. It's sad. It's sad that it's 115 degrees out right now and it's burning and he's sweating and he's dying and he doesn't have any money. That's sad, but somebody else can come along and help him. It's not going to be me. be like the Levite. We're like the priest. You know, maybe he's been there too long and he's unclean. I don't want to sin by going over and helping him. You know, I don't want to get my hands dirty. I don't want to, because it's just not, it's not me. I can't do it. It's just not gonna happen today, God. I know I should. I know it's the right thing to do. I know it would help the guy out, but I'm just not going to. Or we pass by and we don't even look. We're in a hurry. We've got places to go. We've got people to see. We've got things to do. We've got appointments that we've got to keep. We've got to do our thing. And so therefore, we're not going to let ourselves be slowed down by the inconvenience of helping somebody else. Or maybe we're going to be like the Samaritan. The rotten, no good Samaritan. Rotten, no good. That's my words. That's what they would have thought of the Samaritan. Jesus uses that to make the point of your religious leaders wouldn't help. They wouldn't do what was necessary. They wouldn't even make the slightest adjustment to their lives. But that Samaritan did. He went out of his way to do what was right. See, I found myself, we've occasionally been with one vehicle, my wife working half hour, 45 minutes away, maybe even an hour, depending upon exactly where she's at. And I'll be at work and I'll decide, you know what, I need to just walk home. I wasn't able to get a ride today, so I'll walk home. And I'll walk down the major thoroughfares and have a bag or two of groceries, because that's what's needed. I need to take the groceries home. And as I'm walking down the street, I'll pass car after car, and I don't pay a whole lot of attention to whether it's people that I know. Every once in a while, I'll see somebody that I know, and they'll wave, and they'll just pass on by, and I'll think, wait a minute, why didn't you stop to help me? Now, it's not that big of a deal. It's a mile and a half. And I could use the exercise, most people would say, and it's not that big a deal, except on those really hot days, or those really rainy days, or those really cold days, where somebody doesn't take the time to stop and help. But then I think of myself, am I willing to stop and help? Or is my first thought, I can't stop and help because I don't know what they're going to do to me. I don't know who that person is. I don't know anything about them. And besides, I've got this appointment that I've got to keep. I've got to keep myself on track today because I've got a lot of things that I've got to get done. I just don't have time. Or it's late at night and you're driving down the road and you see that, you see the flashers and the guy pulled over and you're like, I really ought to stop and help them get their tire changed. Because if I stop, it get them going a whole lot faster. But, I can't. Because my wife and kids are in the car and I don't want to have to leave them in the car with the car just running there, worrying about me and what's going to happen or I can't stop because I'm by myself. I don't know what that guy's going to do, and they're expecting me. And if I'm 15 minutes later than normal, they're going to worry. And I was looking forward to that cake and ice cream, when I got home. We spend too much time making excuses as to why we can't help. We spend so much time worrying about reasons why we can't listen. We spend so much time coming up with reasons as to why the other person doesn't deserve our love. That, maybe all we need to do is just sit down and say, you know what? If this is what's keeping me and you apart, then forget it. I'll change. I'll change my thought process. I'll change my way of life. I'll change me to help you. I'll be a neighbor. See, a neighbor is someone who, or at least the way it used to be, a neighbor used to be, you're in the middle of a recipe and you'll walk the half mile to the neighbor's house because it was a lot closer than the 10 miles that would be to go into town. But you'd walk the half mile over to the neighbor's house to buy a couple of eggs, borrow a couple of eggs, or half a cup of milk, or some oil, or some flour. And you knew that you'd be called upon to do the same. A neighbor was somebody who, when you knew that the person next to you was sick, you'd bring them a meal, or you'd watch their dog, or you'd take care of their packages whenever they were gone. And then you'd hold their mail for them, or let their packages be delivered to your house. A neighbor is someone who would volunteer to cut their yard because you knew that the husband was out of town working for the trucking company and was going to be gone for a couple of weeks. And you're just doing it to be nice, to be neighborly, because it was what was right. And today we don't even take 2 minutes to know who our neighbors are. Don't take 2 minutes to know what the neighbor's needs are. And by golly, by gum, we're not going to allow packages to come to our house. I have a hard enough time mowing my own yard. Why would I mow theirs? I don't have time to fix a meal for my 3 kids. How do I have time to fix a meal for somebody else? It becomes all about me, not all about them. See, the story of the Good Samaritan is not about answering the question, who's my neighbor? Jesus assumes that the man who came to him knows what that answer is. That the neighbor is anyone that we come in contact with. See, the parable of the Good Samaritan is about us being neighborly. Taking of our time. Taking of our energy. Taking of our money. Taking of our gifts. Taking of ourselves. And giving and helping someone else. See, the Good Samaritan didn't just take the man and make sure he was taken care of for the moment. He made sure he was taken care of for a lifetime. Or at least for the immediate future. He provided the innkeeper with a couple of silver coins to probably, keep him fed, keep him sheltered for a week or 2 weeks, or maybe even a little bit longer, till he could get back and see if there's anything else that he could do to help. Not just a short-term thing, but a long-term thing. Because he cared. Do we truly care about our neighbors? Do we truly care about others? To give of ourselves, to stop making excuses, to stop worrying about our needs, and to put others first. It's a hard thing to do. It's an extremely difficult thing to do. We talk, and I've only mentioned it, or kind of beat around the bush with the things going on today in our world. One of the reasons I beat around the bush is, quite honestly, I don't know how others feel. I know how I myself feel. And it ends up boiling down to those 3 little words that we get so tied up on. It's those 3 little words of Black Lives Matter. We get tied up in that because we think of the big words Black Lives Matter as in terms of individuals who are rioting and who are looting and who are burning things down. And so that gives us an excuse. We can't support that concept because that's people who are destroying things. But no, that's not at the heart of what that means. At the heart of what that means is saying, you know what? That person over there, that person matters. He's been told all his life that simply because of the color of his skin, he's not worth as much as I am. And that's simply not true. It's not about saying his life is more important. It's more important than he's been told it is. It's about saying his life matters. And that's what it boils down to for us. Taking time to say, you know what? Your life matters to me. You matter to me. I'm going to put down my book. I'm going to put down my phone. I'm going to take time to hear what you have to say because you matter. I'm going to help you out because you matter to me. And sometimes we have difficulty with that because the person doesn't look like me, or doesn't talk like me, or act like me, or they're not from where I'm from, or they don't vote the same way that I do. They don't worship the same way that I do. But to take time to say, you know what? Let's put all this other stuff aside. And let's go out and have a cup of coffee. Let's put all this other stuff to the wayside, all our differences, and find out what we have in common. Or I can tell you've got a need. I can tell that you need a ride to work. So I'm going to give you that ride to work because it's what you need. I can tell you need some groceries. I'm going to give you these groceries. I can tell that your yard needs mowed. I'm going to mow your yard. I don't expect anything in return. I don't want anything in return. I want to help you. I want to do something for you. See, one of the biggest things that I keep coming back to, and it's the part that hurts me the most and saddens me the most, it's because we won't take time to help our brothers and sisters who have needs. Oh, we will whenever that need is huge. When there's cancer on the table, we'll take time to attend the benefit, and we'll provide money, and we'll give, and we'll give, and we'll help with transportation, we'll help with we'll do that in the midst of the huge situation because we know that it's the right thing to do. But what about when Bob's in the hospital and his wife's got to go to work? Who's going to watch the kids? Or when Sue's in the hospital and Bob's got to work, who's going to watch the kids? Who's going to help with the meals? Who's going to help with the outside work? Who's going to help with the needs that are there? We can do that. These are things that we can do to just be neighborly, to just care. To do it because it's the right thing to do. To do it because it's what God would have us to do. See, as the man who asked Jesus the question said, we can love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, with all our strength. That's easy. Well, it's easy to say. to love God. The harder part is loving people, because people let us down, because people are different, because people have tangible needs, and to meet those needs means sacrifice. But that's what we're called to do. To love God, to love people, to do as He did for us. Love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. To love your neighbor as yourself. Who's your neighbor? Not the right question. The question is, are you being neighbor?